Hello and welcome to Monarch deck profile. Well, Monarch still is kind of not in their full strength since we for some reason didn't get Pantheism to 3. This list that I made for you is actually really still very decent and work essentially in the same principles as my last list, or the one that I did for Minor Negative, or the one I did lastly here. But it has some particular additional upgrades, so you're more than welcome to check that out and let me know in the comments down below what do you think and what you will change as well, because this deck is very fun, but unfortunately not 100% power. Still, it's very cool. But before we jump right into the table, I would say the usual things: a subscriber a day, keep the depression away. So if you want to help me, you're more than welcome to sub to the channel, as well as give a like to this video, because it really helps, trust me. The algorithm make me feel better. It's just really good when you do that. And secondly, there are other yugitubers in the cards in the description down below, so you're more than welcome to check them and give them a little bit more love. And we have a giveaway going on in the channel, so yeah, you're more than welcome to take part in that. The more bigger we'll get, the more giveaways there will be, the more bigger this giveaway will be. So yeah, it just simple as that. Consider that up, and we're already at 1,230 already, less than a week after we reached 1,200. It's absolutely ridiculous. Thank you all. But now, let's jump right into the table, shall we? While the deck itself doesn't have Pantheism at 3, I would say before we begin, it's still really cool that you can just pretty much like bring one of your big boss monsters, and that's either supported with domain as well as maybe other field spell. No, I meant floodgate, and either or both of them, which is really cool. So that's really cool. And unfortunately, like, I don't understand why they didn't release them in the release list that they did in June, but I digress. Maybe we'll be able to see this in the next ban list, hopefully in September or a little bit before of that. But let's jump right into the monsters. So starting things off, let's start off with the big monarchs, 3 and 3. Then we also run 1 copy of Thestalos, 1 copy of Karaz, and 1 copy of Majesty's Fiend. These are your monarchs or your tribute summon monsters. Like specifically your tribute summon monsters. I decided not to run Vanity's Fiend in this list because specifically when I play with Vanity's Fiend, it was really fun to play with it, but it's like either his effect wasn't like that 100% needed, and I know as weird as it sounds, either not 100% needed, or he was just kind of a brick compared to all of the others. Like, maybe in the future, maybe cut those in another card and run just Vanity's Fiend instead, and maybe even just run a Lure of Darkness on top of that, just to raise consistency. But for the time being, this list kind of works. Unfortunately, we don't have Pantheism at 3, so this is how the way that the decks works right now. But Majesty's Fiend is really cool. It's searchable. It's making all monsters, cannot activate monster effects, which is really cool. Karaz is mostly either a card that you summon, like a mini monarchs, because you do need 2 mini monarchs in case that you don't open up with the field spells and 2 tributes. So this just serves for that, and this is essentially giving you the ability to pop cards for yourself or to your opponent, and then either you or your opponent, depending on the numbers that you pop for each other, draw cards. You don't really care about this that much, but the fact that like it's give you the ability to just pop your own stuff or pop your opponent things and then either go to OTK or draw a little bit more, it's just really important, and just having this one is just really okay at 1. You don't really want to have multiples. Thestalos, it's just this, but worse. You could run Caius instead, or just not run this at all and run something else, but I just thought like I want to have 9 because 9 felt to me like a good number of monarchs. And these two, I'm pretty sure, are very much understandable. Erebus, you send 2 monarch spells and traps from your deck or hand, I believe, as well, to the graveyard, and then you shuffle a card from your opponent's hand, field, or graveyard, which is really cool. And then if he's in the graveyard, you can just ditch a monarch spell or trap and then retrieve one of your so-called monarchs, these guys. Ether, I still cannot believe it's a 3. This card is absolutely ridiculous. You pretty much do the same thing, but you most of the time essentially like summon a monarch directly from your deck, and you're going to most of the time summon Erebus, like, or should I say Monarch studded monster, you'll be able to summon Erebus from your deck, then get Erebus back to your hand during the end phase, because that's how their effect work, and then you essentially during your opponent's turn use their other effect to tribute during your opponent's turn, summon the Erebus, and then shuffle a card for them. It just really, really stupid, and also get double Foolish Burial Gifts, which is also really good. But it's just absolutely ridiculous the way that this deck works. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, you need 9 Monarchs because you want to have, or should I say Monarch monsters, 9 of them, because you want to have the ability to open up with them, but not way too much. And just 8 for some reason didn't really feel enough. I don't know why, just 8 didn't really feel enough for me. Next up for the Honorary Monarch, the last one, we're running 3 copies of Linkslayer. This thing is just so awesome. It has so many purposes that is absolutely ridiculous. This thing is a Photon Thrasher for your tribute summons. It's a board clear for, or should I say, like a mini Twin Twister by himself. It's also level 5, and you can use your own little guys to tribute them to have a pseudo Monarch if you need to, and you didn't open up with or anything else. It just so dumb. If you open up with, like, for example, let's say Idea and whatever, and you didn't really, or should I say Erebus, and you kind of like didn't really have a way to do anything, you just use Erebus, tribute summon on the Erebus because you can, and then you just put your domain pass. It sometimes works this way, and just absolutely ridiculous. Linkslayer is absolutely awesome monster in this deck. I love this card to death here. Then, for speaking of Eidos and Idea, for some reason I call this one Erebus, but okay. Anyway, these two are very, very important. Methra is not really good anymore for anybody who run her, because you give your opponent a token, which you don't really want in the Link era for the off chance that they will out your board, so yeah, you don't want to have that. Even though you could say it doesn't really matter because technically they're going to kill you anyway, but still. Eidos and Idea, pretty good. Eidos is the additional normal summon, as well as an effect in the graveyard. You can banish it and just summon the Idea back from your graveyard. That's pretty much what he does. And she let you to summon this from the deck. And this also give you the ability when it's sent to the graveyard and banished, I think both of the effects, like when she's sent to the graveyard, she can retrieve to you one of your banished Monarch spells and traps, which is really cool. So most of the time it's just going to be Pantheism, so that's pretty much what the point of this is. And that's pretty much does it for the monsters. 18 monsters, yeah, not a whole lot. You don't really run hand traps, don't run anything. This deck is pretty much simple and simple-minded into what it does. As for the spell, 3 copies of Tenacity, 3 copies of Domain. Yes, I do have 1 common and 2 super rares. Shut up. I didn't open up an OTS pack. I believe it was 3. 3 it was? I think it is. Yes, it was 3. Regardless, I didn't open up there, and I kind of seen that the last copy is just cost way too much, so no. And then 3 copies, of course, of obviously Stormforth. These are your primary core spells. Unfortunately, Pantheism, I'm not calling it core spell because it's at 1. But Tenacity, just grab to you whatever spell or trap you need, as long as you hold a Monarch studded monster, which is really important to have that. Obviously, Domain is pretty much your lock, and Stormforth is absolutely ridiculous during your opponent's turn. If you also have Ether or whatever, you can just pretty much... another way to just tribute during their turn is just absolutely dumb how stupid this is. It's just so stupid. I love those cards. These 3 are your core cards in terms of the spell lineup. As for the other Monarch spells, we're running 2 copies of Tenacity, 1 copy of Pantheism, and 1 copy of March. This is a weird lineup, okay? Well, a lot of people like to run 3 return. I came to the conclusion that 3 return is way too much and really not needed. I've seen players actually even play this at 1 to just say that this card is absolutely terrible, even though that Pantheism at 1 and you need this. I kind of standing in the middle, where you want to run 2, but you don't want to run 3. You want to open up with this or search into it, but you don't want to have way too much of this, because this, unlike Tenacity, is even more dead. Like Tenacity, if you open up with a Monarch in your hand and this, you can still search something. If you open up with Tenacity and not a way to even summon anything, it's just a dead card. And even with Link Slayer and everything, it's like it's just a dead card. This one, it just didn't really prove to be useful. And I thought like it was either running a third Link Slayer or this, and a third Link Slayer was so much better than this. Pantheism is your broken card. I don't think I need to explain this one. And Martyr the Monarch is just a nice protection. If you want to card another spell for maybe a third that, you could cut March. March is nice, but it's not 100% explanatory on everything. I still think like the one copy is something that you should try to run, but if you really, really want your return, there is a way to run a third copy. Like I mentioned, either cut the Link Slayer or cut the March. That is totally up to you. That does it for the Monarch spells. Now we'll move on to the generic spells. 1 Reinforcements of the Army, 1 Foolish Barrel of Goods, and 1 Normal Foolish Barrel. These are your power spells. Reinforcements of the Army is obviously Search Idea, as there's really nothing to explain about this one. As for Foolish Burial Goods, it's actually really good. You either send Pantheism sometimes. Yes, sometimes you do skip on the draw and just immediately go into the search because you need that. And because you don't have 3 of it, just immediately just having your best spell is not a bad idea. And then Idea can essentially fetch the spell back and then you get the draw, which is really cool. Or you can send, Prime, which is one of the traps, so that's really nice. And the Foolish Burial, it's a card that I'm a little bit iffy about, but it's still really good to have the ability to send either Erebus or, not Idea, what do you call it, Eidos or something like that you just want to have in the graveyard to just start your plays. So that does it for the spells. 14 spells. Now we'll move on to the traps, or should I say 16 spells, sorry. Because we have 18 monsters, 16 spells, and we have 6 traps, which 4 of them are actually really understandable. 2 Prime. This one is pretty self-explanatory. You pretty much, if it's a continuous trap, you can target 2 Monarch spells in cards in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, and then you draw 1 card. And if it's in the graveyard, you banish Monarch spell or trap from the graveyard to special summon this as a fairy level 5, and it's counted as 2 tributes, which is really cool for next turn if you need to. So that's really nice. And then this is just also pretty cool, which is, this one is absolutely dumb. Actually, it doesn't count as 2 tributes. I don't know why I said it counts as 2 tributes. I think I was mistaken with something else. Regardless, Erupt is dumb. It's just your own skill drain on steroids. As long as you control a tribute summon monster, it just skill drain. And even if you don't have a tribute summon monster, you can just still flip this up and just be like, oh, for the turn, negate the effect of all monsters on the field, and if I don't have anything, tribute summon monster during the end phase, you send this. So it's like, even without the tribute summon monster, it's still a skill drain for a turn. But if you have the tribute summon monster, it just skill drain for anything besides it, which is absolutely dumb. And lastly, for another Floodgate, we're on 2 copies of There Can Only Be One. Or There Can Be Only One. I always mistake with this one pronunciation. Regardless, this one is really good. You do have so many types in your extra deck, or should I say extra deck, in the main deck. This deck doesn't run an extra deck. What the hell is wrong with me today? You have a fairy, you have a zombie, you have a pyro, you have a warrior, you have a fiend, you have a Cyvers, and a spellcaster. These are the types of monsters that you have in the deck, because technically Idea is also a warrior. Regardless, it's like it's giving you so many options. This is also a fairy, but like the point is you'll be able to activate this, and even if you break, you can just set this down and just be a little bit of annoying for a turn or two until they have to remove this, and then you can either OTK or just lock them even more and just annoy them to death. That's how good this card is. It's just so annoying, so fun. And just having 2 copies just proved to be very, very useful. I would not say that you have to run 2 copies. You could cut this down and run 2 more additional consistency cards, or even like cut these 2 and like I said, Thestalos and Koraz, and then just run Vanity's Fiend, as well as an additional maybe Interruption, or should I say like an Upstart Goblin or something. But these are just really, really proved to be very, very useful, and I love these cards to death. There Can Be Only One is just so stupid, and I love it. And that pretty much does it for the deck. 40 cards deck. Simple, straightforward, no extra deck. Yeah, unfortunately Pantheism is still at 1, but the deck is still very, very fun, and mostly cheap if you want to pick that up. I would say this, that even if Pantheism will be back at 3, I don't see this deck become extra deck Monarchs again, so do not expect that when Pantheism will be back, but still a very, very fun deck. So yeah, that's pretty much it. See you next time. Remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day, stay safe, and remember, we also have still a giveaway. So yeah, you're more than welcome to enter that if you haven't already. Bye-bye.